Welcome to another episode of Bullyball with me, Alex, my co-host Joseph. How you doing?
Doing good. Ready to talk about mandatory minicamp.
Yep. So, like he said, we're just gonna wrap up minicamp that happened this past week, and then so it'll probably be a pretty short one. Stay tuned. We're gonna be coming up with some fun topics here for the meantime between now and training camp. So, stay tuned for those episodes coming up. Let's get into it.
Tony Montana, Tony Montana, Tony Montana, check up on my ear. Tony Montana, Tony Montana, Tony Montana, I'm about to cut the.
Alrighty. So, like we said, mandatory minicamp just wrapped up this past week. The Niners cut it short a day or so, I believe. So I think overall it's 2 or 3 days, maybe. They got a good turnout. The big news coming out of that was that Deebo Samuel was there for mandatory minicamp. He wasn't taking a part of any drills or anything, but he was on the side of the field running, throwing the ball with Shanahan's son. He was wearing some Niner gear. So that's good to see, that he's still invested, still supporting the squad and everything. So that's good to see. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so they were supposed to have another week of OTAs and they decided to move up minicamp, cut out a whole week of OTAs. So and then they ended one day early, so they only did 2 days of minicamp. But yeah, seeing Deebo show up, it's good news, Doesn't mean anything's amended or deals being worked on, but at least, he's willing to be there. He was there to make his money, but also to show, like, hey, I'm a professional. Let's handle our business and let's move on. Another good news, Bosa was there. Everyone doesn't think it's a big deal, but it is because Bosa does have a 5th-year option, so he has one more extra year on his contract than Deebo, but he can be working on a deal right now. And he said, or I think it was Shanahan that said, they're not currently working on that deal, but Bosa isn't too worried about it, he said. So that's another good sign.
Yep. And, Trent Williams said that he's had a lot of conversations with Deebo. So that's good to show. That's good to see that Trent's veteran leadership is showing up and affecting some players like Deebo, and I'm sure many other younger players as well. And Richard Sherman put out a tweet saying the same thing, like this is the value of veteran leadership. So that's good to see because Trent Williams did go through a similar situation as Deebo did last offseason. Hopefully it doesn't drag out like Trent's did, but it's good to see that his advice is rubbing off on Deebo. So that's a positive note.
Speaking of veteran players, rubbing off on young players and things of that nature, how do you feel about Jerry Rice and Steve Young kind of taking young Trey Lance under their wings? When you look, like supposedly it was Jimmy last year and that helped a lot, the professionalism. But to have your young quarterback, year 2 quarterback, being kind of mentored by legends of the game, and one of the greatest 49ers QBs to ever play the game, how does that make you feel from a fan's perspective?
I think it's good. I think it's great. Any of that, because they have that winning pedigree, that winning experience, many Super Bowls for Jerry Rice. Steve Young had the one starting Super Bowl when he was actually starting and won it. So I think it's good. All the advice that you can get from great players like that, Hall of Fame players like that, you should take it and run with it. Steve Young got his jersey back there, wherever, right there. Great player, like you said, one of the greatest 49ers quarterbacks ever. So, yeah, kind of similar playing style as well. Steve Young liked to run the ball. Trey Lance is going to not hopefully run it all crazy, but he will run every now and again. So I think they're very similar. They don't have like that crazy speed. So yeah, I think any advice you can give from those two is great.
Yeah, definitely. And with that being said, let's hop into this mandatory minicamp. Obviously, one thing I noticed big time this minicamp is you see varying reports. The coaches are saying one thing about players, and you have the media kind of taking the other side of it. One of those examples being Brandon Ayuk. So we've been hearing from media people, hey, he's struggling. He's dropping passes. He looks slow. He doesn't look in shape. But then Kyle Shanahan goes on and talks, and he says, hey, Brandon Ayuk looks the best he's ever looked at this point in the offseason. And then also you had Charvarius Ward, lockdown corner, go on and say Brandon Ayuk can be a number one wide receiver. So, do you think the media is just catching maybe bad practices? Or do you think, because, they don't get to watch every single practice, what do you think is causing the rift of opinions on the player?
Yeah, the media I think has only saw 2 out of all the practices, right? That the Niners have done.
Yeah, they've seen a couple, 2 to 4.
So who knows exactly, with the media actually being there, who knows how much the Niners are actually getting into the practice, because I'm sure you don't want to show a bunch of stuff. But I'm going to value, obviously, a lot more what the coaching staff and other players are saying than what the media is saying. I think Trey Lance said it good. It was I don't care about the media's opinion, because they're not the ones that are paying me. They're not the ones that are playing alongside me. He says he cares about what the players and the coaching staff thinks. So I think that can go for fans as well. The media is going to give you those things to bite on for entertainment purposes. But the players and the coaches are really seeing what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in the meeting rooms, even what's going on more on the practice field than what the media is. So I think I'd much rather value the players and coaches' opinions than the media's. And I wanted to add on to that, because Shanahan said not only has Ayuk had the best offseason he's had since he's been in the Niners facility, but he also said Juwan Jennings has as well. They said that he stood out in that practice, that the media was there on Tuesday. But he said that he was particularly good in the red zone, which is good to see, because the Niners really haven't had that true red zone threat receiver for a long time. So I think Juwan Jennings can easily fill out that. He came on great at the end of last year, just a third down monster, big body and people, showing some strength, that the Niners don't really have for their receivers. He brings a different type of skill set, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Juwan Jennings?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the first day of minicamp was that red zone period. And I'm pretty sure it was 4 for 4 from Trey to Juwan for touchdowns or something, or 4 for 5, some insane number. But yeah, Juwan, crazy thing, when he got drafted, I believe it was the 7th round 2 years ago. You turned on the highlights, and I know people hate highlights and everything, but you see a dude that even on his highlights couldn't create separation, but he was strong at the catch point, and he was a yak receiver. He broke a ton of tackles. And with that, and also the main video you'll ever see of Juwan Jennings is a Hail Mary in the last play of the game against Georgia or something, and he brings it down over 3 people. So yeah, he definitely brings that different type of play. And the reason people weren't high on him was his speed. He ran a 4.7 at the combine or something like that. But as you've come to see in the league, as long as your route running is good, you can create separation. You don't need that speed. Sometimes speed without route running, you're not going to be good in the NFL. So Charvarius Ward actually also talked about Juwan, and he said, "Hey, this dude surprised me. Like, he's a lot better of a player than I thought he was." And we saw Juwan Jennings can create and win one-on-one matchups often against high-level talent. He did it all year last year towards the end of the season, in those big clutch moments. So, it's crazy. When the offseason first started, all of us wanted to get like a big receiver, not a big receiver, but a big name receiver. You know what I mean? And, Juwan Jennings, he's been here the whole time. It's crazy to me that he was on the practice squad his whole first year and never got snatched up by anybody.
I think he was hurt too while he was on the practice squad, wasn't he? Like he was dealing with some injuries while he was on there, like his back or something. And yeah, like you said, Charvarius Ward had very high things to say about him. He said that he was a great wide receiver and that he surprised him. He didn't think that he was going to bring like that much juice, which is that's like great to hear. Charvarius, this is his exact quote. He said, "Juwan kind of surprised me a little bit. He's got a lot more talent than I thought he had. He's a great route runner. He knows how to work his leverage." And, that's big because, another receiver that was kind of like that was what was the little white guy's receiver, the receiver, best friends with Kittle? Trent Taylor. Yeah. Juwan Jennings has a similar skill set, but he's a lot bigger. So, like, he's going to be able to win those one-on-one, like, over-the-shoulder catches in the red zone and stuff. So that's great to see. I think Juwan Jennings is going to surprise a lot of people this year.
And one more thing on Juwan. I was watching, I believe it was Grant Cohn, one of his videos earlier this week. And, they're talking about who is the Draymond Green on the 49ers. And they were saying, like, Deebo. And then someone said Jimmy Ward. The guy that's gonna, he ain't scared to get in somebody's face, and get in the head of the opponent. I think that's Juwan Jennings. Wasn't it Juwan Jennings in that Jaguars game that, he pissed off the corner and then drew a flag and then, that got us off on the right foot for that game. I was at that game also, so I didn't really see it happening in the moment.
And against the Cowboys, you remember when he blindsided Trayvon Diggs?
You need a dude that's gonna, get the other team upset. That's kind of what T.O. did back in the day. He would piss teams off. And I'm not saying Juwan is T.O., but I'm just saying that demeanor.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that was interesting was Ian Rappaport went on the Pat McAfee show and had this to say about the Deebo contract extension situation. He said, "What the 49ers, I think, have done is try to say to him, we're not going to use you as a running back. They drafted a running back in the 3rd round. They have a couple of good players, running backs coming from last year. I think they like to use him on the gadget plays, but not give it to him between the tackles 15 times. That is something that actually speaks maybe louder than a new contract," which is interesting because I know we've hit on it in the past podcast multiple times, was that we agree that we don't really want Deebo getting those runs between the tackles as many times as he did because that is going to shorten his playing career. Running backs don't have a very long playing life compared to like a receiver or another player like that. So I think using him as a running back like that is going to shorten that time for him. And I could see that being a reason why he'd want to be traded, Hopefully the Niners weren't trying to use that against him as leverage, like, oh, you're a running back. We're going to pay you running back money instead of wide receiver money. But, it's good to see that hopefully the Niners actually are saying, like, we're not going to use you as a running back anymore. Hopefully that's what Tyrion Davis-Price was brought in for, between the tackles. Because even the runs between the tackles with Deebo weren't too successful. It was really those outside runs, I think it was against the Cowboys. Me and you were talking during the game. We were like, why do we keep giving it to him up the tackles? Like, it's not working.
It was pretty terrible.
Yeah. So my question for you is, would you still pay Deebo that top money if he's not going to be playing running back at all for us?
Yes. I think he's probably a little under the range of what Cup and who was the other highest one?
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, a couple million under that, you know what I mean? 2 or 3 million less a year. Like 20 to 22 range to me. You got to remember Deebo had like 1,700 yards receiving last year with a quarterback that has a bum arm. So you got to remember, like that dude, he probably would have been a 2,000-yard receiver if he didn't have a bum arm quarterback the back end of the season. So, and if they had running backs capable of playing, because you got to remember, all the running backs were hurt. It happens to us every year. So definitely worth the money, I think also taking the load off of him a little bit because, Jimmy's one of those guys that he gets locked in. Like you said earlier in the offseason, the ball needs to be spread around more. Deebo's going to draw a lot of double coverage this year. So I expect Trey to spread the ball around a lot more. And you might see higher stats from Ayuk, Jennings, Kittle, hopefully. And I think that'll benefit Deebo as well. So.
And I think a lot of people forget too, was by like mid-season, Deebo had I think something crazy, like over 1,000 receiving yards by like mid-season. But then at that point is when we started using him a lot more at running back and started cutting back his receptions and targets like that as a receiver. So Deebo was on a crazy pace at midseason as just a plain old receiver, So that shows that he's still like one of the better receivers in the league. I think a lot of people forget that he was on that crazy pace just as a receiver.
And when Jimmy got hurt in that Titan game, ball didn't get moved downfield anymore after that. So changed up everything. So I have another topic because, we don't know how Trey Lance is going to hold up on the field yet until we see how this season plays out. Shanahan used them I didn't like the way he used them, more in the Arizona game. I felt like he was under a little more control in the Texans game, but the way he was running them in that Cardinals game was terrible. And Trey dealt with a couple injuries. He had the finger that was in the preseason. He got hurt with the finger. He had the knee from the Cardinal game. So the dude was getting banged up. And if he happens to get banged up this year, we've been hearing some reports that Nate Sudfeld, he ain't looking like he can win you a game, if it comes down to it. What we have been hearing is Brock Purdy legit looks like he could maybe win that spot. What do you think about that QB2 competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the backup goes, I think whoever's the best quarterback should win it. That's really all that matters, because if you do have to come in, you at least want to be somewhat serviceable. You want to at least – the offense is going to see a significant drop-off, but you don't want it to be too crazy to where you can't win a game. So I think if Purdy can win it, perfect. Trey had that season with Sudfeld kind of show him while Jimmy was on the field. Sudfeld could kind of talk with Trey throughout oh, yeah, this, he has that veteran experience. I don't think Trey exactly needs that anymore. I mean, I think it would help a little bit, but I don't think he needs it as much as he did last year. So if Brock Purdy is the starter, then, it is what it is. Not the starter, but the backup.
Yeah. And one thing with Brock Purdy, I watched a lot of JT O'Sullivan, the QB school. He had a lot of videos on Brock Purdy, from previous year, this year, and he loves Brock Purdy's footwork. Like, he's higher on Brock Purdy's footwork than a lot of QBs going into the draft. And, he loves his professionalism, the way he can read the field. He doesn't love the arm strength. The arm strength lost him a couple games from when I was watching. But, I think, if you train the dude up, he might be able to step in and win you a game. He's kind of, he's kind of like on the Jimmy arm strength level. But I feel like he's a little more mobile. He could come in and be serviceable. So we'll see in the preseason. I think that'll definitely be the deciding factor on who wins QB2.
I agree. I agree with you. Another thing to touch on was Jake Brendel. They pretty much locked him in as like the starting center for now. Trent Williams kind of touched on it a little bit, said he's like every other center he's played with, that he's super intelligent, knows a bunch about the offense, and that he's like a good player in general. What are your thoughts on Brendel? I know we kind of touched on it last pod, but what are your thoughts now?
He's a guy been in the league a long time. Like we said, practice squad mostly, but I believe it was our offensive coordinator, or our O-line coach was with him in Miami or something like that. He has that continuity, and his measurables are pretty much exactly the same as Alex Max coming out of college. So hey, if he's the best for the position, he's the best for the spot. You know what I mean? We'll see when the pads come on. It's where O-line, D-line, linebackers, that's where you're going to separate the starters from the backups. So we'll see.
I agree. Here's a little video of Trey Lance to Ayuk at minicamp this past week. Just promising to see, it's a great pass. Love to see Ayuk getting some work in the red zone. You guys see that?
Yep.
Great spiral. Love to see Ayuk going up and above over Dante Johnson. Johnson. Yeah. You love to see that. I mean, that's a great catch and throw. That pass looks – I know a lot of people – let's touch on that real quick too while we're on the topic. Are you concerned? Because there has been some clips that came out of minicamp of Trey Lance's, one, his throwing motion, and two, some of those balls that he was throwing, not the tightest of a spiral. They're a little shaky, a little wobbly. What are you concerned with that? What's your overall concern level with that?
Doesn't really concern me. All the QB gurus have said, it's not a big deal. I've never played wide receiver or anything, so I don't know how much more difficult it is to catch. But they said Trey's worked on his touch, not throwing it as hard when he doesn't need to. So doesn't seem like a concern to me. When the season rolls around, if we see a lot of drops like that are kind of out of the ordinary, then maybe it's a concern. But as of right now, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Yep, I agree. I agree with you. It's something to keep your eye on, Let's see how it plays out when pads come on and stuff. But I agree, not too concerning. Another thing coming out of minicamp was, teammates such as Samson Ebukam, Nick Bosa were raving about Drake Jackson. They're saying Bosa said that Drake Jackson can do things that Bosa couldn't even do in his rookie year. Ebukam said he was surprised. He said, damn, he's good. He's going to be a key factor in this defense. What are your thoughts on Drake Jackson? Because a lot of this is another thing between the media and the players that we've been seeing in this mini camp was that a lot of the media said that he wasn't looking too good. He was looking kind of sloppy, overweight, not good weight either, like fat. He was looking kind of fat, not like ripped up or anything. So what are your thoughts on Drake Jackson?
And I also said that in our last pod that, he looks big. And I think everyone can agree he gained a lot of weight. But, he didn't lose the bend, supposedly, according to the players. He didn't lose the speed. So, as long as he can transform that weight into good weight in 2 months' time, we're good to go. So, no complaints from me. It'll be interesting to see how much he touches the field early on, because you do have Ebukam that's probably going to start. You have Kerry Hyder that is going to get a lot of reps outside. Elmenahue, who a lot of people are raving about, we'll see how he does this year. And you still have Kamiko Toure, who looks like, you saw those clips of him training out there. That dude looks next level off the line. So we know the 49ers rotate D linemen pretty often, but it'll be interesting to see how many reps the rookie gets early on in the season.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that was interesting that I saw on the Twitter sphere this morning was ESPN staff writer Dan Graziano supposedly spoke with several NFL team executives about the situations around Jimmy G and Baker Mayfield. And supposedly most of these executives in the NFL think that Jimmy G is going to be released rather than traded or even stay on the team. What are your thoughts on that?
So I actually wrote that down as well. And I wanted to ask a question first before we dive completely in. So say you are one of these franchises that maybe needs a quarterback. I don't think any of them really need one of the two guys right now, but they could use them. Who would you take if you were, say, the Panthers or Seattle, and both guys were free agents? Jimmy or Baker? Same price, you could do a 1-year deal, whatever. Which guy?
So this one, it's a great question, but I think if I'm Seattle, I'm probably going to go with Jimmy, just because Jimmy knows the 49ers. He's played at Levi's. He's played at Seattle already. He knows our defense. He knows our players. He kind of knows what to expect, So, and he's played the NFC West in general. So he's played the Cardinals. He's also played the Rams and has been pretty successful. Whether if that was his own play or if that was Shanahan scheming things up, who knows? Everybody will have differing opinions on that. But he has been successful in the NFC West. So if I'm Seattle, I'm probably going Jimmy. But if I am, who else did you say? The Panthers? If I'm the Panthers, I'd probably go Baker for the Panthers. Just because he's younger, and I think he has more upside than Jimmy does. I think the shoulder injury for Baker really hampered his play this year. And I think if he can get over that, he can be pretty successful. He's not going to be great or anything, but he can be pretty good, I think he'd have a little bit more of a it factor than Jimmy would for the Panthers.
So to play devil's advocate, you think Jimmy G complements Seattle's receivers well? Because DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are deep threat, throw the ball down the field guys. That ain't Jimmy G.
Tyler Lockett is a down the field guy. DK Metcalf can run in almost anything. I mean, I know that's a big concern coming out of college, but now he can run those slants. He can run the short stuff. They also have other receivers, but they are also a run the ball first type of team.
True.
Seattle's been, especially that they just drafted that. They got a rookie running back who was pretty good. I think out of Michigan State.
Did they get him?
I think Brees Hall. No, I think Brees Hall went to the Jets.
Oh yeah, he was Iowa State.
So Kenneth Walker, I'm pretty sure went to Seattle, and they still have Chris Carson. They still have Penny. So they're run the ball first type of team, and that's obviously Jimmy's forte. So I think that he still complements them well, and you can fit Lockett and DK are great receivers where you can fit them into whatever your quarterback needs. So I wouldn't be too concerned. And like I said, he's been really successful against the NFC West. So I would still go Jimmy.
So with that being said, though, you talked about how Baker was hampered by that shoulder injury. Don't you believe that's going to be Jimmy G this year?
No, because we've seen the same stuff from Jimmy the whole time. We've seen those.
But he's coming off the shoulder injury.
I agree. It's a shoulder and thumb injury, yes. But I think the bigger concern with Jimmy is his decision-making, right? He's been known to just sell out at the end of games. There's times when he's super elite at the end of the fourth quarter, but then there's times where he's throwing just stupid picks. Like, what are you looking at? So I think it's more of a decision-making thing with Jimmy rather than an injury thing.
I agree. I personally think I believe the report, and I think it's probably the most possible thing to happen for at least the 49ers. I think Baker Mayfield could get some trade interest drawn up. I don't know if Jimmy can at this point, unless we start seeing some like crazy hype videos of the dude launching the ball, in his recovery videos in like a month. But I think the 49ers' best like scenario to get Jimmy traded is for Baker Mayfield to get traded or released, and then Deshaun Watson to get suspended for a year or, never be allowed to play again. And then the Browns have to pick up the pieces because they are a team that can compete and go get Jimmy. I think that's realistically the best scenario that they're going to get anything of value, to be honest with you. And I think that's kind of what they're clinching and hoping for. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think I know we kind of touched on it a couple pods ago too, but if you can get Jimmy to restructure, let's say take $10, $12 million off his contract this year, would you keep him to be a backup or at least to compete with Trey? Or are you giving the job to Trey no matter what?
He's off the team no matter what. You gotta, if you're making a change, you gotta commit to the change. What's that one saying? If you keep doing the same thing, you'll never whatever. I don't know the actual saying, but you keep Jimmy on the team, you're gonna have people that the players love Jimmy, and if things start going wrong, how even us as fans are. We turn quickly on our quarterbacks in the Bay Area. So, you got to have the guy gone. He can't be on the team.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Got to commit to it no matter what. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on for minicamp?
Nope. So, next thing we're looking forward to is hopefully we get some news on some signings, the Deebo signing. But end of July is what we're looking for training camp. So Pad's finally going to be coming on. We got a long time between now and then. And, for everyone still tuned in, we're going to have some pretty fun episodes coming up because we got to, make it to that time. So we're going to do one podcast of the Shanahan era top 10 games. We're going to break down which ones we think are the top 10 and why. And then also we're going to do a podcast of the top 5 fantasy football options on this 49er team this year. And if you have any more suggestions or things we should talk about, drop a comment, let us know. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We keep dropping content. We're trying to do our best. We want to grow this podcast. We want to start doing more live streams, communicating with the fans. We're fans too. So keep tuning in. We appreciate all of you guys. Anything else from you?
Yeah, and drop a comment if you're still watching too, if you want us to go live for these next ones about the top 10 games, top 5 fantasy players, because I'd like to see your guys' input too, to see if it matches up with ours in terms of the games and players. I think that'd be interesting. So if you're still watching, drop a comment. Let us know if you'd like to go live and if you'd want to talk with us about that stuff. So I think that'd be really fun to do a couple live streams for those. Go check out our interviews with Terrell Brown, Jason Poe. Great videos, great interviews. Gives you a neat little insight of a current player and a past player. So go take a look at those. But besides that, I don't have anything else. See you guys next week.
We'll see you on the next one.
Turn it back. Money.